Well, welcome to part 3 of the restoration of our 2-foot gauge Fowler locomotive. Here you can see we're still stripping down the frames to get them ready for shot blasting and then repair and paint. This is taking out the pin there from the equalising bar from the suspension. On the drawings, this is our copy of the original 1924 Fowler Works drawings for the locomotive. You can see the equalising bar there along the bottom, and it takes the load up the bars through the leaf spring and down to the leading and trailing edge of the pair of driving wheels. The bar pivots on the pin you saw us remove earlier, and now you'll see the equalising bar drop to the floor, free, ready for us to take the rest of the suspension off as well. Moving on to the brakes now. This is Jenny taking the bolts out of one of the brake hanger brackets. There are 4 of these, and you can see it's a casting. We're removing it from the frame so that we can be-blast it independently. You can see here on the drawings, this is the square boss that you've just seen, the bolts being untightened on. There's 2 of them on this side. This is the side view, and then looking on the plan view from the top, you can clearly see the shape of the castings that we're removing. The brake hangers drop from these castings to the brake rods, which transmit the load equally to each of the 4 wheels from the cab controls. Moving on to the next job, this is burning off the rusted nuts and bolts for the bracket that holds the pivot bolt for the rear pony truck. Here on the drawings you can see from the side the bracket itself is a folded piece of steel, and there's a pin welded into the centre of it. Here on the plan view looking over the top you can see the A-shaped frame of the pony truck itself and the pin from the top, and this is the shape of the bracket that we took off. And here's Jenny holding it after the bolts had been removed. Getting exciting now. The axle boxes were unfortunately stuck into the horn guides on the frame, so we lubricated everything, and you can see as we lifted it with the crane, you can see the chain on the right hand side there around the frame. As we lifted the frame, we had to put the crowbars in there on the top of the axle boxes to try and ease the axle boxes down at the same time. The frame's lifted quite easily really, and here's the leading set of driving wheels being wheeled out of the way so that we can drop the frames down onto some wood blocks to finish cleaning them before shot blasting. Once the frames were down on the wood blocks, this is Jenny putting the horn keeps back in again to restore the structural rigidity of the frames while it's sitting supported between the 2 buffer beams. The axle boxes themselves are split axle boxes, and here you can see we're knocking the bottom part of the axle box off, and you can see the bearing shell visible at the bottom there. When it drops to the floor you'll be able to see the shape of it. Now the frames are off the driving wheels completely, you can really get in and get the last few bits off the frames. This is Jenny knocking a split pin out from the pin from the bottom of the spring hangers. These are the last bits of the suspension that we need to remove. Here Dave's bashing the pin through from the inside of the frames out, because there's a head on the outside of the frames that sits neatly in a recess, and this is the pin coming loose from the frames. The frame's pretty much ready now. We can take a temporary change of direction and look at the boiler. This is the cast surround for the firebox door, and it was really solidly rusted and fastened onto the studs into the back head. Here you can see we're using splitting wedges to push through to try and get it away. We managed, and this is Dave finally doing the last part of removing it after a good 25-minute struggle.
Yes. Well done.
Moving on to the front end, we wanted to get the smoke box off so that we could get access to the tube plate properly for the boiler inspector and for new tubes. When we looked at the smoke box, it really is a sacrificial part anyway. The plate work, as you can see, was welded here and there, and it was quite badly corroded. So we're going to make a new smoke box. And so here you can see cutting off the original smoke box and removing it so that we've got good access to the front tube plate. It's a difficult decision to make to destroy original or old material, but we're trying to make a working, running, reliable locomotive. So whilst we've got one eye on conservation, we've also got a sensible eye, I hope, on which materials are worthy of preservation and which materials are sacrificial in essence anyway. This is removing the washout plugs from the tube plate. These are tapered plugs and they're gunmetal. And because they're tapered plugs, we assumed that once we got them split, they'd come out dead easily. But after heating up the tube plate with the blowtorch, really trying to get them hot and split them and soaking them in WD-40, they fought us every step of the way. Here you can see really having to hang on the end of a long bar extension handle to get them there, even with the heat. And we had to really work hard to wind them every step of the way. But eventually we did get them out, and once quenched, because they retained quite a lot of heat from the blowtorch, we found them to be in really surprisingly good condition.
Yeah.
Moving up to the top of the boiler now, looking into the dome, these are the two steam pipes that supply steam to the injectors. The bracket is held on by a nut which was just rusted on, so we're not destroying the nut, we're just heating it up to try and break the stiction before taking it off with a spanner. Looking again at the general arrangement drawing, you can see the regulator casting in the dome, and you can see the two steam pipes for the injectors with the bracket that we removed the nut from earlier. And next we're moving on to the flange with the main steam pipe at the bottom. The regulator casting itself is in really good condition, but the nuts and bolts were way beyond repair that fastened the casting onto the main steam pipe down the top of the barrel. Looking in from one of the holes from the inspection plugs that you saw us remove earlier, you can see that the boiler is actually in really good condition. The tubes are remarkable. We will be scrapping the tubes and taking them out and putting brand new ones in, but as an early sign, it's really good news and an indication that the rest of the boiler might also be in quite good condition. This is now looking in through the back head and through the regulator hole past the crown stays in the top of the firebox. And you can see the crown stays as well are really good material, so we've got our fingers crossed that the boiler will work out good. You can never count your chickens till they're hatched, but we're hopeful at this stage. Out comes the regulator casting, and that pretty much takes us to the end of part 3. Thanks ever so much for watching.